Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome. Today I'll talk about 4 U.S. presidents: Harry S. Truman, Dwight D. Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, and Lyndon B. Johnson. Harry S. Truman was the 33rd U.S. president. He served 2 terms from 1945 to 1953. He was born in Lamar, Missouri in 1884. He grew up in Independence and for 12 years prospered as a Missouri farmer. He went to France during World War II as a captain in the field artillery. Returning, he married Elizabeth Virginia Wallace and opened a haberdashery in Kansas City. As president, Truman made some of the most crucial decisions in his history. Soon after VE Day, the war against Japan had reached its final stage. An urgent plea to Japan to surrender was rejected. Truman, after consultations with his advisors, ordered atomic bombs dropped on cities devoted to war work. 2 were Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japanese surrender quickly followed. In June 1945, Truman witnessed the signing of the Charter of the United Nations, hopefully established to preserve peace. In 1947, as the Soviet Union pressured Turkey and through guerrillas threatened to take over Greece, he asked Congress to aid the 2 countries, enunciating the program that bears his name, the Truman Doctrine. The Marshall Plan, named for his Secretary of State, stimulated spectacular economic recovery in war-torn Western Europe. When the Russians blockaded the western sectors of Berlin in 1948, Truman created a massive airlift to supply Berliners until the Russians backed down. Meanwhile, he was negotiating a military alliance to protect Western nations, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, established in 1949. In June 1950, when the Communist government of North Korea attacked South Korea, Truman conferred promptly with his military advisors. There was, he wrote, complete, almost unspoken acceptance on the part of everyone that whatever had to be done to meet this aggression had to be done. There was no suggestion from anyone that either the United Nations or the United States could back away from it. A long, discouraging struggle ensued as UN forces held a line above the old boundary of South Korea. Truman kept the war a limited one, rather than risk a major conflict with China and perhaps Russia. Deciding not to run again, he retired to independence. At age 88, he died December 26, 1972, after a stubborn fight for life. Dwight D. Eisenhower was the 34th U.S. president. He served 2 terms from 1953 to 1961. Born in Texas in 1890, brought up in Abilene, Kansas, Eisenhower was the 3rd of 7 sons. He excelled in sports in high school and received an appointment to West Point. Stationed in Texas as a 2nd lieutenant, he met Mamie Geneva Dowd, whom he married in 1916. In his early Army career, he excelled in staff assignments serving under Generals John J. Pershing, Douglas MacArthur, and Walter Kruger. After Pearl Harbor, General George C. Marshall called him to Washington for a war plans assignment. He commanded the Allied forces landing in North Africa in November 1942. On D-Day 1944, he was Supreme Commander of the troops invading France. "I like Ike" was an irresistible slogan. Eisenhower won a sweeping victory. The president proposed that the United States and Russia exchange blueprints of each other's military establishment and provide within our countries facilities for aerial photography to the other country. The Russians greeted the proposal with silence, but were so cordial throughout the meetings that tensions relaxed. Eisenhower concentrated on maintaining world peace. He watched with pleasure the development of his Atoms for Peace program, the loan of American uranium to have not nations for peaceful purposes. Before he left office in January 1961 for his farm in Gettysburg, he urged the necessity of maintaining an adequate military strength, but cautioned that vast, long-continued military expenditures could breed potential dangers to our way of life. He concluded with a prayer for peace. In the goodness of time, both themes remained timely and urgent when he died, after a long illness on March 28, 1969. John F. Kennedy was the 35th U.S. President. He served from 1961 to 1963. Of Irish descent, he was born in Brookline, Massachusetts on May 29, 1917. Graduating from Harvard in 1940, he entered in the Navy. In 1943, when his PT boat was rammed and sunk by a Japanese destroyer, Kennedy, despite grave injuries, led the survivors through perilous waters to safety. In 1956, Kennedy almost gained a Democratic nomination for vice president, and 4 years later was a first-ballot nominee for president. Millions watched his television debates with the Republican candidate Richard M. Nixon. Winning by a narrow margin in a popular vote, Kennedy became the first Roman Catholic president. His inaugural address offered the memorable injunction, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." As president, he set out to redeem his campaign pledge to get America moving again. His economic programs launched the country on its longest sustained expansion since World War II. Before his death, he laid plans for a massive assault on persisting pockets of privation and poverty. Responding to ever more urgent demands, he took vigorous action in the cause of equal rights, calling for new civil rights legislation. His vision of America extended to the quality of the national culture and the central role of the arts in a vital society. One of the biggest crises he had to deal with in his presidency was the Cuban Missile Crisis. The months after he showed significant progress towards his goal of a world of law and free choice, banishing the world of war and coercion. His administration thus saw the beginning of a new hope for both the equal rights of Americans and the peace of the world. On November 22, 1963, when he was hardly past his first 1,000 days in office, John Fitzgerald Kennedy was killed by an assassin's bullet as his motorcade wound through Dallas, Texas. Kennedy was the youngest man elected president. He was the youngest to die. He was married to Jacqueline Lee Bouvier Kennedy. Lyndon B. Johnson was the 36th U.S. president. He served from 1963 to 1969. He was born on August 27, 1908 in Central Texas, not far from Johnson City, which his family had helped settle. He felt the pinch of rural poverty as he grew up, working his way through Southwest Texas State Teachers College, now known as Texas State University, San Marcos. He learned compassion for the poverty of others when he taught students of Mexican descent. On November 22, 1963, when Kennedy was assassinated, Johnson was sworn in as president. First, he obtained enactment of the measures President Kennedy had begun urging at the time of his death, a new civil rights bill, a tax cut. Next, he urged the nation to build a great society, a place where the meaning of man's life matches the marvels of man's labor. In 1964, Johnson won the presidency with 61% of the vote, had the widest popular margin in American history, more than 15 million votes. The Great Society program became Johnson's agenda for Congress in January 1965. Aid to education, attack on disease, Medicare, urban renewal, beautification, conservation, development of depressed regions, a wide-scale fight against poverty, control and prevention of crime and delinquency, removal of obstacles to the right to vote. Under Johnson, the country made spectacular exploration of space in a program he had championed since its start. When 3 astronauts successfully orbited the moon in December 1968, Johnson congratulated them. "You've taken all of us, all over the world, into a new era." The other crisis arose from Vietnam. Despite Johnson's efforts to end communist aggression and achieve a settlement, fighting continued. Controversy over the war had become acute by the end of March 1968, when he limited the bombing of North Vietnam in order to initiate negotiations. When he left office, peace talks were underway. He did not live to see them successful, but died suddenly of a heart attack on his Texas ranch on January 22, 1970. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode. Prezi signing out. Bye.